In this lesson, you will be learning about differentiation in teaching and learning. As a teacher, you may already realize that your students are all different in some way. It is important that you are fair in your assessment of your learners. So you might think that if you set the same assessment for all your learners, you have achieved a fair and consistent assessment. But this is often untrue. Differentiation is not something new. It's something good teachers have always done in every lesson. So what is differentiation? The term differentiation refers to anything that accommodates differences in your learners and as a result leads them to learn more effectively. Convery and Coyle from the Centre for Information and Language and Teaching and Research defined differentiation in their 1993 publication Differentiation, Taking the Initiative as the process by which teachers provide opportunities for learners to achieve their potential, working at their own pace through a variety of relevant learning activities. So how do you differentiate? Before you can start to differentiate effectively, you need to be aware of the different strengths and weaknesses of your students. What one student might be capable of accomplishing easily, another might need support to achieve. You also need to be aware of the different ways in which your students learn and take account of this in planning your teaching. Where possible, you should aim to include a range of activities or strategies to take account of a variety of learning styles. You should undertake some kind of subject or subject skills related assessment during one of the early sessions. This will allow you to get to know your students and be aware of areas where you will need to differentiate. From this information, you will be able to build an initial group profile, and this can be added to as you get to know your students better and become more aware of their individual strengths and needs. Before you plan your differentiation strategies, you should consider the environment in which the teaching takes place. Differentiation works best in a supportive environment where both teacher and student are aware of each other's strengths and needs and work together to support each other. It is important to create an atmosphere which is supportive and non-threatening, as this helps students to recognize and value individual differences so that they will support each other in their learning. You should also aim to make time to speak to each student individually in order to give feedback and support and develop targets that are appropriate to the individual student. Students should be clear about your availability for individual support. It is important not to allow your time to be dominated by an individual student to the detriment of the rest of the group. Aims and objectives should be made clear at the start of the session, and any activity should be clearly explained and its purpose made evident in order that students fully understand what is expected of them and why. Students should be given manageable tasks and clear short-term goals in order that they can be motivated by success. Students need to understand expectations, so it is important to establish ground rules. This is best done in discussion with students, but there are some basic elements that should not be left out. Your students should be made aware of the need to respect and support other students. This could be linked to a discussion about equality and diversity, types of bullying, appropriate language, and appropriate behavior. Students should be made aware that not everyone works at the same pace, and that those that work more quickly should not dominate the lesson. This could be facilitated by the use of direct questioning, elected spokespeople, limiting the number of answers per person, mini whiteboards, and other classroom management strategies. Students will benefit from an understanding of the types of activity that will be employed and the purpose and benefits of each activity. These could include pair work, group work, peer assessment, etc. You need to ensure students are aware of strategies to enable those who are absent to have the opportunity to catch up without affecting the learning that is planned for the rest of the group. There are a variety of different methods of differentiation. The method you choose should be based on the activity you are planning, the desired learning outcome, and the needs of the student group. Differentiation by task is when you set a slightly different task for different students either depending on their different skills, ability, or way of working. You could set the same task but give a variety of contexts with varying degrees of difficulty. For example, students in a music songwriting lesson could be asked to compose songs in the styles of different genres of varying degrees of difficulty. In group projects, this could be reflected in the tasks allocated to individuals as part of the overall task. Differentiation by extension task or challenge card is where you develop a related activity which could be handed to the students on completion of work. You could also develop a range of challenge cards with varying degrees of difficulty to extend the scope of a task or activity. An example of an extension activity in a health and social care lesson looking at signs, symptoms and effects of various illnesses would be to find support agencies for a particular illness. An example of a challenge card in the same lesson would be to give a higher performing group a card asking them to consider the connections between the illness and the environment as part of the activity, or give another higher performing group a card asking them to consider the links between the illness and preventative measures. Lower performing groups would carry out the activity without challenge cards. Differentiation by questioning would include questions directed to specific students taking account of their levels of ability and their self-confidence. This could either be to check their understanding or to push them to enable them to explore the subject in more depth. A range of questions should be planned beforehand. This should incorporate the assessment of different levels of learning. For details on different levels of learning, refer to Bloom's taxonomy. With project or problem-based learning, students can approach a problem in a wide variety of ways and can build on their different skills, interests and experiences. It involves setting a problem for the students which allows them to discover for themselves either information, rules, trends, advantages and disadvantages, etc. An example of this would be to give students a correctly punctuated piece of writing containing a large number of semicolons, and then asking them to work out the rules for the use of the semicolon. Differentiation by support could include LSA support or tutor support to individuals or small groups. It could also include the way you might explain things to students, the type of language you would use, and how explicit you might need to be. It would also include the choice of students who work together, either in pair work or group work. This could mean mixing stronger and weaker students or students with different skills so that they can support each other, or having stronger and weaker groups to allow the teacher and LSA to focus their support. Differentiation by outcome refers to the expectations we might have of our students' work. For example, if a student has been struggling with a particular aspect of the course, the teacher is likely to value a basic outcome more highly for this student than for a student who has found this aspect particularly easy. Therefore, expected outcomes can be matched to the previous performance and targets set. Differentiation by interest involves using student interests as a motivating factor, grouping students with similar interests, organizing tasks themed on student interest where possible, or making the most of opportunities to allow students to share their skills and knowledge. This can also help in celebrating diversity. Differentiation by culture involves taking account of learners' diverse cultural backgrounds. At its simplest, this means using images and examples that reflect cultural diversity. You should ensure you are aware of the importance of cultural traditions and features in your group. This may involve some form of research on your part. At another level, it might mean devising activities that tap into diverse perspectives or traditions to enrich the whole learning experience.